Good evening, I'm Alma Angeles, and you're watching Eagle News International on tonight's headlines. The World Health Organization has reported an increase in deaths due to the coronavirus in the past month. Fears of a new lockdown sparked panic buying in Hong Kong, with the city determined to maintain China's strict zero-COVID policy. Our correspondent in Hong Kong, Kit Wong, will give us an update. And South Korea is dropping its vaunted trace, test, and treat program as a surge in Omicron cases threatens to overwhelm the healthcare system. Our EBC correspondent in Seoul, Christine Jewel Yabut, joins us live. And around 13 million people across Ethiopia, Kenya, and Somalia will face severe hunger in the first 3 months of the year, according to the UN World Food Program. First in our news, the World Health Organization has reported an increase in deaths due to the coronavirus in the past month. Dr. Maria Van Kerkhove, WHO's COVID-19 technical lead, also highlighted the need to reduce the opportunity for further variants to emerge. As of February this year, February 6, over 392 million confirmed cases and over 5.7 million deaths had been reported globally. Take a look.
The global situation with COVID is very dynamic. We are seeing a record number of cases being reported to WHO each week. Every day, between 3 and 4 million cases are being reported to us, and we know that this is an underestimate of the true number of cases. What is extremely concerning is that we are seeing increases in deaths, and in the last 4 weeks alone, we've seen a sharp increase in deaths around the world. Omicron, the latest variant of concern, has quickly replaced Delta, the last variant of concern that was circulating globally, and this has happened very quickly. We've seen a very sharp peak in cases around the world, but not all countries have peaked in terms of their cases. And as I said, the deaths are also increasing as well. And we know that people who are infected with Omicron can have anything from asymptomatic infection, meaning no symptoms, all the way through severe disease and death. While there is a lower risk of needing hospitalization if you're infected with Omicron, there are still a large number of people who are requiring hospitalization. So some people are still getting severe disease, and there are people who are dying from Omicron. Omicron, this variant of concern, has several sublineages: BA.1, BA.1.1, BA.2, and BA.3. Most of the sequences that are available of Omicron are BA.1, but we are seeing increasing trends of BA.2 in terms of the sequences that are being shared globally. WHO is working with thousands of scientists to study Omicron and all of these sublineages in terms of what it means for transmission, for severity, and impact of our interventions. BA.2 does have a slight advantage, growth advantage over BA.1, but we will continue to work with scientists to better understand and inform you with the latest information as soon as we receive it. COVID-19 vaccines are incredibly safe and effective at preventing severe disease and death, so it is really important that you get vaccinated when it's your turn. We also reduce transmission as much as we can. This is why a layered approach is really important. Countries are in very different situations around the world, but it's still important that we adhere to life-saving measures: physical distancing, wearing of a well-fitted mask, cleaning your hands, avoided crowded spaces, investing in ventilation where we live, where we work, where we study. All of this is really important to drive transmission down so that we reduce exposure to this virus, we prevent the opportunity for people getting infected in the first place, and we reduce the opportunity for more variants to emerge.
Meanwhile, Hong Kong residents are facing a shortage of fresh food and fast rising prices for what they can find in stock. Antivirus controls in mainland China leaves truck drivers responsible for ferrying supply, and they are unable to re-enter the city. Kit Wong reports.
At the same place, shoppers found Hong Kong's markets feeling a shortage of food. Familiar scenes in a city that is back under growing restrictions in contrast to much of the world. On Tuesday, the city recorded 625 new infections, a daily record but a number that pales in comparison with outbreaks around the world. The Omicron variant spike has alarmed authorities, and leader Carrie Lam announced renewed curbs. and since reminiscent of early 2020, when the coronavirus first emerged in China, Hong Kongers this week scrambled to stock up as panic set in over food supply stocks. This week, a cross-border truck driver tested positive for COVID, spurring a temporary hold-up of delivery trucks. The government said Hong Kong's vegetable supply has since decreased by about a third. City leader Carrie Lam announced that meetings in homes of more than 2 families were forbidden. She has ordered religious sites and hair salons to close by Thursday, sending Hong Kongers rushing to barbers for a last-minute trim. Meanwhile, yesterday, the Stay-Home Safe scheme was launched. Under this scheme, COVID-19 patients, close contacts, and household members of those close contacts who are deemed appropriate after assessment will be arranged to undergo home quarantine for 14 days and 4 days, respectively. The Center for Health Protection explained that factors including the suitability of each individual's dwelling place for quarantine, the risk level of those confining at the same place and their physical condition will be taken into consideration during the assessment.
而家喺599G 第599G 嘅規例咧，喺公眾地方嘅群組聚會人數上限係4人。今日嘅修訂咧係收緊到2人。我哋會加入禁止2個家庭以上喺私人地方進行跨家庭嘅聚會。今年嘅2月24日開始，所有嘅人士進入去受限嘅處所咧，係需要使用安心出行，而且咧係要提供疫苗個接種記錄。除咗用法律嘅規定嚟到去使用呢個疫苗通行證咧，政府亦都會以行政手段喺其他嘅處所引入使用疫苗嘅通行證。呢啲包括係學校啦、大學啦。所有接受社會接受政府資助嘅。I hope we all realize that the time has come for Hong Kong to take some tough measures. And every measure that we now introduce has been undertaken in another jurisdiction, including some places and countries which are very proud of their human rights, their democracy, and so on. They are doing all these sort of things because this is about life. Public health prevails very often, the individual freedoms. But we will not make any individual in Hong Kong who simply could not live. So there will be exemptions, there will be compassionate treatment for this and that.
Those who need to undergo home quarantine must stay in their dwelling place and wear an electronic wristband throughout the quarantine period. From Hong Kong, reporting for Eagle News, this is Kip Wong, and we live in interesting times.
Thank you, Kit. Meanwhile, South Korea said it is dropping its vaunted trace, test, and treat strategy as cases of COVID increase due to the Omicron variant. Joining us live from Seoul, here's Christine Jewel Uyabot. Hello, Christine.
Yes, Alma. South Korea said Wednesday it was dropping its vaunted trace, test, and treat program. A surge in Omicron cases is now threatening to overwhelm the country's healthcare system. At the start of the pandemic in 2020, South Korea was hit by one of the worst early outbreaks of the disease outside China, but brought it under control with mass testing and aggressive contact tracing. The strategy earned the country widespread praise, but Seoul has now decided to drop the system after surpassing 1 million infections over the weekend due to the rapid spread of Omicron. Son Young-rae, a senior health official here, said the trace, test, and treat approach is difficult to operate due to limited resources and also has excessively high social and economic costs. South Korea's daily caseload hit a record high of 49,567 on Tuesday, with health authorities saying the number could hit 170,000 later this month. The figure has more than doubled in less than a week. A new set of measures to manage the virus is taking effect in stages starting this month and will refocus resources on the most vulnerable. Sun said the aim is to diagnose and treat high-risk groups to prevent the collapse of the medical system and the deterioration of social and economic functions. Authorities will be prioritizing tests for people aged 60 or older. Previously, anyone testing positive was sent to a government center for treatment and quarantine, but now asymptomatic patients are being told to stay at home. Around 85% of the country's 52 million population have been double vaccinated, according to the Korea Disease Control and Prevention Agency, or KDCA. This is Christine Jewel Uyabut reporting from Seoul, South Korea. We live in interesting times.
Thank you, Christine. Really appreciate it. Thank you for your report and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Alma.
Now, there is a possibility that the National Capital Region will be placed under the most lenient alert level 1. And that is if COVID cases will further decline in the coming days, that according to Malacanang. In a radio interview, acting presidential spokesperson, Cabinet Secretary Carlos Nograles also said key officials of the government's interagency task force for the management of emerging infectious diseases will be having a preliminary assessment of Metro Manila's COVID-19 situation on Thursday tomorrow. It will be followed by a meeting on either February 12 or 13 to discuss the latest COVID-19 data and numbers in different regions, including the NCR. Meanwhile, Metropolitan Manila Development Authority, or MMDA officer in charge and General Manager Romando Artes earlier said the NCR mayors are also ready to ease the restrictions within their respective local government units, but are still waiting for the final guidelines from the IATF. Meanwhile, the Department of Labor and Employment, or DOLE, will be conducting large-scale inspections of establishments to ensure compliance of workplaces with health safety standards to warrant the further downgrade of the National Capital Region from Alert Level 2 to 1. Let's listen in.
We're all tired of this pandemic. We're frustrated. We're worn down. None more worn down than our frontline health workers who've been going flat out for 2 years. But everyone.
All right, we apologize for that. We'll go for a short break and we'll be right back.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon, hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
Welcome back. Truckers paralyzing the Canadian capital in anger at COVID rules showed no sign of backing down as several of the nation's provinces announced it was time to roll back restrictions that count among the world's toughest. With authorities struggling to bring the protest movement to heel, Saskatchewan in the country's west said it was ready to lift all pandemic restrictions, with Quebec and Alberta also signaling plans to ease measures. In the capital, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who a day earlier issued a stern warning the protests had to stop, appeared to shift tone, saying he understood how frustrated everyone is and that the time is coming when we will be able to relax. Let's listen in.
We're all tired of this pandemic. We're frustrated. We're worn down. None more worn down than our frontline health workers who've been going flat out for 2 years. But everyone's tired of having to wear masks, having to follow public health restrictions. Families like mine just last week that test positive, have to follow public health rules, have to isolate themselves. Nobody wants to do that. I don't know how many conversations parents have had to have with kids about not going to birthday parties, but not getting to have sleepovers. This pandemic has sucked for all Canadians.
It bothers me. I think it strikes at what a lot of people feel about what they feel Canadian values are, and we cherish freedom, and this is not about freedom.
To be honest, I'm quite supportive of it. I think it's time for the government to talk and to meet with the truckers and hear what they have to say.
The so-called Freedom Convoy began in January in Western Canada, launched in anger at requirements that truckers either be vaccinated or test and isolate when crossing the U.S.-Canadian border. Having snowballed into an occupation of the Canadian capital, the protest has sparked solidarity rallies across the nation and abroad. And by Tuesday, had forced a temporary closure of a key U.S. border bridge, the busiest international land border crossing in North America. Meanwhile, the truckers have received U.S. support, including from former President Donald Trump. Let's listen in.
That's true. The Canadian truckers, you've been reading about it, who are resisting bravely these lawless mandates, are doing more to defend American freedom than our own leaders by far. And we want those great Canadian truckers to know that we are with them all the way. They are. They've really shown something. It's time to move on.
In New Zealand, anti-vaccine mandate protesters faced off with police outside Parliament today as demonstrators camped inside the Wellington legislature's grounds, and they vowed to stay as long as it takes. Take a look.
For our kids and our family, our grandkids, we see what's going wrong with this country.
I think that inspired a lot of New Zealanders just to get up and take action, because if people sit back and don't say anything, no one's going to hear our voice.
New Zealand requires mandatory COVID vaccinations for people working in sectors such as health, law enforcement, education, and defense, with those who refuse in the jab facing the sack. Proof of vaccination must also be shown to enter restaurants, sports events, and religious services. The protest, which began Tuesday as a copycat of a Freedom Convoy action by Canadian truckers, turned tense as about 100 police stood guard on the steps of the Parliament. Many of the vehicles that jammed central Wellington streets the previous day had left by Wednesday, but a hardcore of several hundred protesters pitched tents and refused to leave. And several dozen people gathered in Nice, France, before hitting the road in a freedom convoy against the vaccine pass. The movement is also inspired by the Canadian truckers who gridlocked the capital, who are angry at requirements they be either vaccinated or test and isolate when crossing the Canadian border. And they are planning several rallies across France before gathering in Paris. Meanwhile, Indonesia began testing a homegrown COVID vaccine on humans after getting the green light from the drug regulator as the country faces a rising wave of virus cases. Research on the Merah Putih or red-white vaccine, named after the colors of the Indonesian national flag, is led by Airlangga University and Biotis Pharmaceutical Indonesia. The project has suffered delays since starting in 2020, but authorities are now hoping to authorize its use by the middle of 2022 if the trials are successful. Health Minister Budi Gunadi Sadikin said the drug, set to be rolled out in the latter stages of Indonesia's vaccination campaign, could be donated to other nations as a booster jab or as a vaccine for children aged 3 to 6. The first and second phases of the clinical trials will involve 90 and 405 adult volunteers, respectively. Meanwhile, Denmark's Queen Margrethe II has tested positive for COVID-19, experiencing only mild symptoms, according to the royal house today. The 81-year-old monarch, who received the third dose of the vaccine in November, tested positive on Tuesday evening and is displaying only mild symptoms, according to the court in a statement. The popular queen, who recently celebrated 50 years on the throne, had to cancel a planned holiday trip to Norway and is isolating at her palace in Copenhagen under current health recommendations. Margrethe II is not the first Nordic sovereign to be infected with the coronavirus. The King and Queen of Sweden, aged 75 and 78, both tested positive in early January. The Department of Labor and Employment will be conducting large-scale inspections of establishments to ensure compliance of workplaces with health safety standards to warrant the further downgrade of the National Capital Region from Alert Level 2 to Alert Level 1. Again, let's listen in.
Malaking bagay yung pagbaba ng alert level from 3 to 2. Medyo nabuhayan yung ating negosyo. At kapag nabuhayan ng negosyo, nabubuhay ang ating employment opportunities. Kaya sabi ko nga, maganda siguro kung i-monitor natin yung situation, at least dito man lang sa NCR. And for that purpose, minobilize ko yung ating mga labor law and occupational safety inspector para tiyakin natin na yung ating mga workplaces ay sumusunod sa lahat ng labor law standards, including occupational safety and health standards. Para sa ganun ay magkakaroon tayo ng magandang workplaces.
Meanwhile, Mr. Bello also reported that they received more than 100,000 applications for COVID-19 Adjustment Measures Program or CAMP as of February 6. He said of the 104,666 total applications received, 31,068 have been approved. A total of 19,187 have been approved for disbursement or payrolls, have been prepared for submission to banks' money remittance centers, while 70,295 applications are still for evaluation. And the news continues here on Eagle News. We'll be right back.
Alam namin ang iyong pagsisikap. Dama namin ang iyong mga sakripisyo. Kita namin ang pagharap mo sa bawat pagsubok. Kaya sa kabila ng mga hamon ng buhay, nandito kami para umalalay. Kasi katulad mo, gusto rin namin ang magandang bukas para sa kanya. Hatid namin ang dekalidad na edukasyon at makabagong pasilidad sa abot kayang halaga. Kaya huwag ka na mangamba. Sasamahan ka namin tuparin ang mga pangarap niya. Maaasahan mong sulit dito ang mga pinagsikapan mo. Sa aming mga makabagong pasilidad at sistema ng edukasyon. May lalabas natin ang aking talino at mga kakayahan niya. Kahit sa munting halaga, makakasiguro ka na makakasabay siya sa mabilis na pag-ikot ng mundo. Sa New Era, karamay mo kami sa bawat hamon. Kaagapay mo kami sa bawat hakbang. Kasama mo kami sa bawat ngiti at tagumpay.
Welcome back. Around 13 million people across Ethiopia, Kenya, and Somalia will face severe hunger in the first 3 months of the year. According to the UN World Food Program, warning this on Tuesday, 3 consecutive failed rainy seasons have decimated crops and led to major livestock deaths, and forecasts say rainfall is likely to remain below average. Take a look.
The United Nations World Food Program, WFP, is today warning an estimated 13 million people are waking up hungry every day across the Horn of Africa as the region grapples with severe drought caused by the driest conditions since 1981. What is particularly striking about this drought is its breadth. Livestock are dying, and that is devastating for pastoral families. Unable to find pasture, and with fodder out of reach of many, pastoralists have watched their livestock die. After 3 consecutive failed rainy seasons, harvests are up to 70% below the norm in affected areas. Now, food and water prices are skyrocketing significantly. This is affecting families' ability to buy. Staple cereal prices have risen between 3 to 5-fold above typical levels in several markets. Rising cereal prices and declining livestock prices means a sharp decline in the terms of trade.
There are millions of lives that are hanging in the balance. The needs are massive, and they are quickly outpacing the available funds to respond to this scale of need. We need to act now and to prevent really a catastrophe. UNICEF projects that up to 20 million people in Eritrea, Ethiopia, Kenya, and Somalia will need water and food assistance in the next 6 months. And that is almost the same amount of people as the population of Greece and Sweden combined. Right now, nearly 5.5 million children in these 4 countries are threatened by acute malnutrition, and an estimated 1.4 million children by severe acute malnutrition. UNICEF fears that this number will increase by 50% if the rain don't come in the next 3 months.
maan arago ka dhulka saara u ekaanayaan oo leexa masa u socota iyo dabayl marka inaan xawaalanaama ka yaabanahay saarooyinka la sheegayo kale in waddanka nagu noqdo.
The UN agency projects that up to 20 million people in Eritrea, Ethiopia, Kenya, and Somalia will need water and food assistance in the next 6 months, and many of them are children. Rescuers and others continue to search for victims of the mudslide that hit Dos Quebradas, an area of low-income housing in western Colombia, where heavy rainfall occurred in recent days. Take a look.
Sentimos fue el desastre ahí y brinqué pues a buscar a mi papá y a mi madrastra y a mis hermanos. Lo único que alcancé fue a sacar a mi hermano y a mi hermana, a un sobrino, a mi madrastra y a una sobrinita que estaban debajo de una nevera, pero están sin vida.
Estruendo muy fuerte a las 6:30 de la mañana y se llevó todas las casitas del frente, como 6 casas se llevó, entre ellos la incluyeron los habitantes que habían ahí.
Una terrible tragedia muy fuerte, no nos lo esperábamos. De un momento a otro estaba no durmiendo y llegó esta terrible tragedia. Eso es parte de la naturaleza.
Y anoche prácticamente fue un aguacero toda la noche, hasta hora de mañana que se oyó el estruendo. Han muerto muchos conocidos, niños, ancianos.
Que es muy cruel sentir esto. Es muy cruel ver este desastre. No tengo más palabras para decir.
The Asian Development Bank has approved a $2 million grant to support the Philippine government's emergency response to the devastation in central and southern provinces caused by Typhoon Odette, the strongest typhoon to make landfall in the country last year. The grant under ADB's Asia-Pacific Disaster Response Fund will provide humanitarian assistance to about 15,000 households, or about 75,000 people in Visayas and Mindanao severely affected by the December 16 typhoon. It'll fund food vouchers to be distributed to target communities which beneficiaries can exchange for food in selected markets. The grant also includes logistics support for the food assistance delivery. ADB Director General for Southeast Asia, Ramesh Subramaniam, said this assistance will help finance the humanitarian needs of those residents, especially people living in remote areas. ADB is partnering with the United Nations World Food Program to deliver the food assistance. In other news, a wild crocodile in Indonesia who was trapped in a tire for more than 5 years has been rescued, freed from its rubber vise, and released back into the wild, according to officials and residents today. Take a look. Conservation workers have been trying to lure the stricken saltwater crocodile from a river since 2016, after residents of Palu City and Sulawesi Island spotted the animal with a motorbike tire wrapped around its neck. But it was a local resident who snared the 5.2-meter or 17-foot-long reptile, who was regularly seen sunbathing in the Palu River in central Sulawesi from its tight squeeze late on Monday. Tilly, a 34-year-old bird seller, used chicken as bait and ropes to catch the beast at the end of what he said was a 3-week rescue effort, before dozens of locals helped to drag the crocodile to shore and cut the tire around its neck. The croc was released back into the wild or into the water immediately after the rescue to relieve cheers from locals. Conservationists believe someone may have deliberately placed the tire around the croc's neck in a failed attempt to trap it as a pet in the archipelago nation that is home to several species of the animal. Tilly beat the authorities to capture because they lacked the proper equipment for a rescue in the river that houses more than 30 other crocodiles. The reptile made headlines in early 2020 when the local government promised a reward to anyone who caught the croc and removed the tire, but later called off the contest over fears it could endanger its safety. But the local conservation agency said Tilly is in line for a prize after his daring plan paid off. And the news continues here on Eagle News. We'll be right back.
Ang morning show na always nagbibigay ng ngiti at saya sa bawat kada all over the world. Tara na't ma-inspire at ma-amaze sa kwento ng mga bawat kada na nagwagi sa anumang hamon at pagsubok ng buhay. Itago na mga remote control at tumambay lang dito sa paborito niyong barkada sa umaga, ang Kada Umaga! Dahil kayo ang bida dito.
Japan is offering Europe part of its liquefied natural gas imports over fears supplies will be disrupted by tensions surrounding a possible Russian invasion of Ukraine. Tokyo's trade minister said this today. Let's listen in.
エマニュエル大使及びフロア大使とのそれぞれの面談では、両大使から欧州への LNG 融通の依頼を受けました。日本への安定供給が確保されることを大前提に、真剣にこれまで検討してきましたが、大使からの要請を受けて、本依頼に対して協力をすることを決定をいたしました。日本企業が自由に販売先を決めることができる LNG について、数隻が2月中に欧州に着くようにすでに向かっているところです。3月についてはそれ以上の隻数が欧州に向かう予定です。4月以降についても情勢を見ながら可能な限り対応できるように各社に検討をお願いをしております。
Now, fears are mounting that a conflict in Ukraine could cause an energy crisis in Europe, which depends heavily on Russian gas. Aguida said he had received requests from the U.S. and EU ambassadors to accommodate the need for the fuel in Europe. On Tuesday, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz backed a threat by U.S. President Joe Biden that the controversial Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline would not proceed if Russia invades Ukraine. The pipeline, set to double natural gas supplies from Russia to Germany, has become a key bargaining chip for the West in its bid to stop Moscow from invading Ukraine. In other news, firefighters in Oklahoma are trying to contain an extremely large fire at a building under construction. The department says part of the building has collapsed under the fire, but no injuries have yet been reported. Take a look. Now, according to an Associated Press report, OKF CFD chief Benny Fulkerson said that the structure was a large under construction apartment complex, and the top floors of the apartment complex could be seen burning in Twitter posts. Portions of the building's top floors could be seen collapsing as well onto the ground below and near the construction equipment. According to a K4 report, the 326-room luxury apartment complex was scheduled to open sometime in the spring with rooms starting at 600 square feet, ranging from $1,100 to more than $4,000 a month, and the fire is under investigation. First, the U.S. Justice Department announced Tuesday it had recovered more than 94,000 Bitcoin stolen in 2016, currently valued at $3.6 billion, a record seizure. A couple accused of seeking to launder the Bitcoin were arrested in New York. Take a look.
Today, the Department of Justice has dealt a major blow to cyber criminals looking to exploit cryptocurrency. The department has charged Ilya Lichtenstein and Heather Morgan for their alleged roles in a conspiracy to launder stolen cryptocurrency taken during the 2016 hack of a virtual currency exchange. That hack resulted in the theft of almost 120,000 Bitcoin, which at the time was worth approximately $71 million. Today, the value of that Bitcoin has grown to over $4.5 billion. As part of this investigation, the Department of Justice has seized over $3.6 billion worth of that stolen cryptocurrency. This is the largest seizure of cryptocurrency ever by U.S. law enforcement. It is also the department's largest single financial seizure in its history. The message to criminals is clear. Cryptocurrency is not a safe haven. We can and we will follow the money no matter what form it takes. As alleged, the defendants used sophisticated efforts to launder the stolen cryptocurrency. But thanks to good old-fashioned police work, we traced the stolen funds from the exchange. Our message today is clear. The United States, together with our partners and allies, will not allow cryptocurrency to become a vehicle for criminals to operate without consequences.
Now, one of Morgan's aliases is Razzle Khan. A video posted online under that name shows a young blonde woman rapping near the New York Stock Exchange. In the song, the woman refers to herself as a crocodile of Wall Street and a risk taker. Bitcoin has existed since 2008 and has seen significant price fluctuations since then. The cryptocurrency attracts big names in finance, but according to U.S. authorities, allows criminal networks to make their financial flows more opaque. Meanwhile, investors are getting spooked by market volatility and high valuations. Many of them have unfriended Facebook stock. Bobby Soriano reports from New York. Bobby.
Hello everyone and welcome to another segment of Mind Your Business, where we are dedicated to discussing the latest news moving the markets and business trends that could be affecting your workplace soon. As the pandemic continues to upend how people meet up with one another, businesses have also had to evolve how they reach out to potential customers and partners. Prior to the arrival of COVID, the most cost-effective way to introduce your business to new customers and clients was by participating in trade shows, conventions, and the like. That all changed in 2020. At the onset of the pandemic, as everyone was still trying to get a grasp on how dangerous the COVID-19 virus would be, trade shows and conventions all over the world were postponed indefinitely, with some convention centers having to be converted to makeshift hospitals to care for those afflicted during the pandemic. Fast forward to the present day, and it has only been within the past few months that large gatherings are beginning to make a serious comeback. Here in New York, the world-famous New York Comic Con held its first in-person fan convention since 2019. Attendees were seemingly thrilled to be back.
It's absolutely amazing to be back here. I'm so excited. I'm not used to doing it, though. It's only our second one since everything happened, and I'm just tired.
How has the atmosphere, how is the atmosphere out here in general?
It very much feels like normal Comic-Cons, even with everyone wearing the mask. It's intense,
Very
it's crowded.
intense.
But it's wonderful.
I think it's wonderful. I think everybody's excited to be back and everybody's super awesome.
It's been fabulous. Honestly, I was so excited. The second I got the email saying that, New York Comic Con is coming back, and I immediately jumped on the wait list and I put it on. And this is actually our first time coming on a Sunday. Normally we go on a Friday, so we definitely were kind of interested in seeing how Sundays were going to be like, and it's been great. We've had a blast.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. The last time we went was 3 years ago, I think. So this was just as fun. There's so much to see every time we're here. All the vendors, the panels.
While the return of NYCC went smoothly, not all conventions fared as well. Only a month later, another large-scale fan convention, Anime NYC, had the unfortunate publicity of having the first reported case of the Omicron variant here in the United States. And therein lies a new normal for event planners trying to navigate a path to profitable and successful trade show or convention. They have to ask the questions like, what procedures do we need in place to keep attendees safe? What kind of budget do we need to have for safety precautions against COVID? How do we manage any possible fallout in the event of attendees testing positive for COVID? These are just some of the questions that future conventions and trade shows need to address, all the while on a reduced budget, as recent data suggests that attendance to these events continues to be below pre-pandemic highs. It's not only attendees showing caution, but vendors and companies as well. CES, one of the largest consumer electronic trade shows in the world, is scheduled to run from January 5th to January 8th. However, the spike in COVID infections throughout the world is giving pause to some of the biggest names in the industry from attending. Tech giants Microsoft and AMD have already canceled their planned appearances at the trade show, and with the new surge in COVID cases, they may not be the last ones to reconsider their appearances. On behalf of everyone at the EBC Business Desk, we'd like to wish all of our viewers a happy and prosperous new year. Thank you for tuning into our business reports, and we hope our segments in 2022 will help you navigate your own business endeavors. Reporting from New York, for Mind Your Business, this is Bobby Soriano, Eagle News.
1 year after its sudden and disconcerting disappearance from a wall at the United Nations, a vast tapestry representing Picasso's iconic Guernica has been returned by owners, the Rockefeller family, to its prominent place at the global body. The rehanging of the immense weaving was underway Saturday morning, according to a UN source, as diplomats expressed relief about the return of the 25-foot-wide work, which hung outside the Security Council chambers, where residents, prime ministers, and ambassadors would regularly pass. The tapestry was commissioned by Nelson Rockefeller in 1955 and woven in a French studio in consultation with Picasso, who did his original Guernica painting during the Spanish Civil War. It represents the bombardment of the Spanish city of that name on April 26, 1937 by German Nazi and Italian fascist forces. The Guernica tapestry, with its probing symbolism, its depiction of horrific aspects of human nature, wrestles with the cruelty, darkness, and also a seed of hope within humanity. Nelson Rockefeller Jr. said in a UN statement announcing the artwork's return. On loan to the UN by the Rockefellers, it was meant to serve as a powerful reminder to UN diplomats of the horrors of war. Screaming women, a dead baby, and a dismembered soldier are rendered in ominous shades of brown and black. And as always, I'll end the day on a thoughtful note. Our ability to look back and smile at our past is proof that God's and life's plan is to keep us moving forward. This has been Eagle News International. I'm Alma Angeles. Stay alert, stay informed, because we live in interesting times. Good night.